Many of you know that I've had three father figures in my life. Obviously, my biological father, who was a piece of work by every matrix you can imagine. He was incredibly physically abusive to my mother. He was mentally and emotionally and spiritually abusive in every way imaginable. And I grew up the early years of my life watching it take place in our house. My mother left him to go meet and marry another man, my stepdad, who, as you all know, molested my four sisters, sexually molested them over a course of almost 15 years. So I'm not going to beat that dead horse because, like as I said, you all know that story. In fact, it's my book, Helplessness, is about my years with him. But what I'm going to share with you is the story of my father in law, Eli Catran, who, through his actions, showed me everything that it meant to be a father. That's not to say the other two didn't, because they did, but in the opposite way. I easily could have followed their example, but I made my decision early on as a young man that was not the example that I was not going to follow. So, as I said, it was an example. But my father in law, Eli Catran, I'm going to tell you my story with him because in fact, I'm going to tell you the story he told me that he did not want anyone to know until after he passed away, because it had to do with sexual abuse that took place in his home. My father in law, Eli Catran, grew up in Brooklyn. White, Jewish, middle class, went to school, went to college. He lived the complete opposite life as I did. Very successful businessman, incredibly successful. As you know, I grew up abject poverty, poor, went to 11 grade schools before I graduated high school, lived in 21 different places, homeless multiple times. You all know that. But as I was writing Helplessness, I was about 3 years away from completing it, but I had a number of manuscript versions of it. And I remember one day giving him a version, knowing that there's no way he's going to read it. But I just felt that, I wanted him to have it. And this is where our story begins. One day, my father in law called, and I love calling him dad. I called him dad all the time. I could not wait until I got married and was able to call my father-in-law dad. I always dreamt of that. And so one day dad calls me and he says, I want you to come to the house. I want to talk to you. And so I said, okay, I'll be over in a few minutes. Now this wasn't odd because, every now and then he'd call me, want me to help him fix something, hang something, every now and then we do these little things together. So when I get to the house, immediately I noticed my mother-in-law is not there, which is odd to me because they were together all the time. But my mother-in-law was not there on this day. Now, keep in mind, my father-in-law died 5 years ago. So he died at 96. So this is shortly before he passed away. He calls me to the house, and as I said, my mother-in-law is not there. Like I said, it was odd because they were always together. So I walk in the house. I said, "Hi, Dad. Basically what's up?" He says, "Come here. I want to talk to you." So he's sitting at the dining room table in his favorite spot, the head of the table. It was Dad's spot. No one sat there unless he's not there. So he says, "Come here. I want to talk to you." Okay, fine. So I'm thinking, okay, what's going on? Did I do something wrong? What is it? So I sit down and I said, "Oh, okay, everything okay?" And he says, "Yeah." He said, I want to share something with you that I've never told anyone except my wife. I've not told my daughters. I've not told my nieces, my nephews, but I'm going to share something with you that you cannot tell anyone until after I pass away. And so I sit back. Okay, what's going on? He says, I want you to know I understand. And he starts patting a stack of papers in front of him. And I'm not paying any attention to it, but he's just patting. And he goes on and says, I want you to know I understand. I understand. I'm like, Dad, you understand what? What are you talking about? And he's just quiet, but he's just patting and he drops his head. And I look down. It's my manuscript. Okay. He says, you cannot, he repeated, you cannot tell anyone this until after I pass away. Not even your wife, his daughter. Okay. And I see his eyes start to water. What the hell is going on here? We've known each other over 40 years. Okay. He said, when I was a young man, about 16 or 17 years old, we lived in New York, as you know. We lived in a 2-story apartment. We were downstairs. Our best friends lived upstairs. We were so close as a family that we left our doors open 24 hours a day. We could come in and out of each other's houses all day, no problem. It made no difference. You just walk right in. We were that close. But I'm thinking, all right, where's this going? And he just starts patting again. And he just drops his head. And I say, Dad, are you okay? And he just shakes his head. Yeah. He then says, one day, my mother sends me upstairs, or my dad, I don't remember which one, to get some eggs, milk, flour, I don't know. Just go upstairs and, go in and get stuff. Because they did that all the time. He says, so I went upstairs, and now he's really got my attention. And now I'm starting to get concerned. This can't be going there. He says, I go upstairs and I walk into the apartment and I don't hear a word. But I look around and no one's there, and okay, I know what I want. And so I start to walk toward the kitchen, and then I hear something coming from the parents' bedroom. I'm getting scared because he's not about to tell me what I think he's about to tell me. He said, I opened the door and the father is sexually abusing my oldest sister. And I just go, he then says, I just stand in the doorway. I'm 16 or 17 years old. I'm around the same age as you. I want you to know I understand. I understand. As I'm standing in the doorway and my sister's on the bed being molested by the father, I lock eyes on my sister and she sees me and I'm frozen. I don't move. And now tears are falling from his eyes. He said, I didn't know what to do. I turned around and I walked back downstairs. I went into our apartment and I did not tell my mother or my father. I didn't say a word to anyone. Minutes later, my sister comes downstairs and we see each other. I didn't say anything to her. She didn't say anything to me. And now he's just crying. And I'm crying because I know exactly what he's feeling, what he's going through. He then says, a few months go by, and it happened again. I saw him molesting her again. And again, I did nothing. And he's a mess at this point. I have never seen my father-in-law like this, but he's a mess. And he's just patting my book, and he starts again, I understand. What's really interesting about this story is oftentimes that I speak, I'm in interviews or something like that, people ask me, so the title of your book is The Emotional Health Challenges, it's called Helplessness, the emotional health challenges brothers experience once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by our parents. Invariably, someone white will say to me, so Keeper, when you're talking about brothers, are you talking about black guys? And I say to them, what are you talking about? Well, because you say brothers, I say brothers in the plural. I did not say brothers. I did not say black guys. I said brothers. But it's interesting that people will assign immediately a racial component to something that has absolutely nothing to do with race. And my father-in-law is telling me the story that for me became the gift that allows me to tell the broader story in an overlapping way that does not, that knocks down all the barriers of race. In fact, as my father-in-law is telling me this story, I don't know what to do. You know, I want to reach out, I want to grab his hand, but I don't know if it's the right thing to do, so I just sit there. And he's crying, and now I'm crying, and I ask him, are you okay? And his reply is no, because I should have done something. You did something. Eventually, you did something. I should have done something. And I tell him, it's okay. It's okay. And so in that moment, he and I have a connection that is incredibly deep. He was about 30 years older than me. And as I said, he's white, he's Jewish, he grew up in New York, he had a much better life than I did growing up. And here I am on the other side of the track, South Central LA, I'm poor. We're struggling all the time to try to get food on the table and keep a roof over our head. But in that moment, we were both the same. We were brothers whose sisters have been sexually abused, me by my parents, and him by their neighbor upstairs. It was one of those things that occurred to me. Here he is, 96 years old, and he's still carrying the emotional burden of something that happened 80 years ago. He knows he's dying, but in this moment, he wants someone to hear him. He wants someone to understand. He wants someone to say, it's okay. He didn't need to do that. He could have kept quiet. He had achieved the ultimate in life. But he wanted someone at the very end to say, it's okay. you you like me, he's like me. We did our best, like all brothers do. And it also occurred to me there was a conversation to be had by he and his sister did not invite him into the conversation, which is usually the case for brothers. We are invited into a conversation but unable to participate, told we can't participate in the conversation. I love my father-in-law. I love my father-in-law to death. In fact, for me, he is the father I always wish I had, and for me, he is my dad. Great husband, great dad, great grandfather. Uh, and this is the other thing that occurred to me. He did not call his white Greek Catholic son-in-law and share this story. He didn't even call his white Jewish son-in-law to tell the story, which he easily could have. What he did was call his black, grew up poor with nothing son-in-law and tell him the story. As I said, it was a gift because it allows me to tell you this. This issue crosses race, it crosses religion, it crosses politics, it crosses social economics, it crosses education, it crosses borders, it crosses waters. It happens everywhere on the planet. There are so many men walking around in silence, wanting someone to hear them, to hear us, to let our sisters know and the world know we are carrying this pain as brothers because we are unable to talk about our pain around this subject. And so for my father-in-law, on his way out, he was able to talk to someone. And I am so, I don't know if the word is happy, proud, just so, so honored that he would tell me. We sat there for, I don't know, 5 minutes, both of us just in tears, just crying about all this. And when I got up, gave him a hug, told him I love him. And I waited. I waited years before telling this story. It is now a central part of my presentation when I'm doing interviews and things. And it's this moment when I tell people this, that they understand. But it took the story between this white Jewish guy and his black son-in-law to drive home the point that this is not about black people. This is about men everywhere.